Despite spending hours in the gym, many people struggle to see noticeable growth in their triceps. If you're frustrated by the lack of results, don't worry, you're not alone. What's up, I'm Lockie, and in this video we're diving into the triceps muscle group and why it's so important for overall arm muscle development. The triceps take up to 2/3 of your upper arm, so if you want bigger arms, the key is to focus on tricep growth. The triceps very quickly went from one of my worst muscle groups to one of my best muscle groups, and in this video I'm going to explain exactly how I've done that using 5 key studies. But here's the thing, many people make extremely common mistakes without realising that it's massively hindering their tricep growth. Over-relying on certain exercises, poor form, and not focusing on all 3 heads of the tricep can be holding you back. So to help you optimize your tricep training, we're going to have a look into what science says about training your triceps effectively. We're going to dive into 4 scientific studies that reveal the most effective exercises and techniques for tricep growth. So the first study we're taking a look at examined the effects that varying degrees of shoulder extension has on the levels of hypertrophy in the triceps. And for this study, all of the participants did both conditions, where condition 1 was where everyone completed the tricep exercises with 0 degrees of shoulder extension, which is just a neutral position where you do a tricep push down, and condition 2 is where all of the tricep exercises are completed with 180 degrees of shoulder extension, which is your arm directly above your head. So the condition that elicited the highest levels of triceps hypertrophy was actually condition 2, where the shoulder was in 180 degrees of extension. This could be because the more extended your shoulder joint is, the more stretch it places on your tricep muscle. And the more stretched a muscle is, the more hypertrophy can take place. But there's plenty of reasons to agree and disagree with the fact that stretch-mediated hypertrophy exists. But let's try and directly answer this question by looking at the next study, which was a narrative review in optimizing resistance training technique to maximize muscle hypertrophy. And although the main aim was to conclude the most optimal training protocols for hypertrophy, they did cover repetition tempo, rep portion focus, and range of motion. But for this portion of the video, we're only going to be concerned about the portion of the rep that we need to focus on the most, which should answer our question to whether a stretch is important for eliciting more hypertrophy than normal. So because this study's a narrative review, there's no actual practical methods to how they gathered any results. Instead, they just gathered lots of studies that drawed conclusions among the topics that they're investigating and then made an overall consensus based on what these studies said. So if we scroll down, we can ignore everything it says about repetition tempo, like it does here, same with range of motion. We just want to scroll towards the conclusion, or we could also look at the abstract if we wanted to. So if you see in the conclusion here, it says the main variable of influence appearing to be range of motion, which again, we said we're not too concerned about at the minute, but this next sentence we are concerned about, which says specifically emphasizing training at long muscle lengths, which in basic terms is emphasizing the portion of the rep that initiates a stretch of your muscle or where there's less tension. Now the portion of the rep where there's less tension and the portion of the rep where there's most stretch are not mutually exclusive, but they can occur at the same time for most exercises. But I want you to primarily think about the portion of the rep where there is a stretch. So your muscle is elongating, which is what it says in the study here. So based on the conclusion of the study and considering the fact that it's a narrative review, so it collates all results from lots of studies, we can take this conclusion with a vast amount of confidence, and we can conclude ourselves that we should be focusing on the portion of the rep that allows the highest stretch. And on top of that, if we want to even better enhance the stretch of the muscle, we should be picking exercises that allow that to happen. So maybe we are right to say that the previous study experienced high levels of hypertrophy with the elbow in 180 degrees of extension because it allows more stretch to take place in the triceps, which, as we can see from this study, can be a promoting factor for hypertrophy. So now we've covered the shoulder angle and the portion of the rep that we should be focusing on the most. But I want to combine the two and find out what is the best range of motion when you're in that super extended position whilst training your triceps. And then we can decide what exercises we're going to be doing to optimize our tricep training. So I wouldn't normally use websites like this, but this website does actually reference some very good scientific articles that we can look into. So he speaks about training at longer muscle lengths being a critical factor, and then he also speaks about previous studies, but this one does talk about hamstring curls, not triceps. But then you're lucky, and if we scroll down, you can see that there is another study that does the exact same thing, but speaks about triceps instead. And if we click on this study, you might recognize it, because this is actually the study that we used to look at how you should be training your triceps in terms of shoulder extension. But my main concern was, can you train in the overhead position for your triceps and it positively impact your tricep hypertrophy. So if we scroll further down onto this study, we can see we pass a load of graphs and loads of tables, but it's actually this summary graph that I'm the most interested in, because this graph shows the total percentage change in muscle volume in your triceps on whether you've done overhead extensions or standard neutral pushdowns, and it also breaks it down by head. So you have the long head, the lateral or medial head, and the whole of your triceps. And I think it's a very obvious fact that actually training your triceps in the overhead extension position benefits your whole triceps, never mind just your lateral, medial or long head individually. Because we can see if we look at whole tricep change in muscle volume, you can see that doing overhead extensions significantly enhanced hypertrophic gain when compared to standard neutral pushdowns. But the only problem I've now encountered is the fact that you might actually be limited on the amount of exercises you can do for your triceps if you're only wanting to do overhead extensions. So off the top of my head, the only two I can think of is the cable overhead extension, like I showed earlier on in the video, or the skull crushers. I mean, I know there's other variations where you can have a dumbbell, but a lot of them just are absolutely naff. So they're the only two I can think of that are good. And I don't think you should be doing just 2 tricep exercises across all of your sessions. I'm not saying you'll only do like 6 sets per session for your triceps, but I'm saying if you just do them exercises, there's not much variance. So if I was you and you're going to use them 2 exercises, use them alongside another 1 or 2 tricep exercises per session that are neutral pushdowns. Because it does seem like the lateral and medial head don't benefit as much from overhead extensions than the long head does, although they do benefit more when doing overhead extensions than neutral pushdowns. So it's up to you how you do it, but that's how I would structure my workout based on this information. So now we know that doing overhead extensions with full range of motion will be most optimal for training your triceps in trying to gain hypertrophy in them. And you should also be doing some neutral pushdowns just for some variance, because you don't want to get stuck into doing just 2 exercises across all of your sessions for one muscle group. So the very last thing we're going to cover is proximity to failure, and that is how close you will be training to maximal muscular failure. Now I spoke about this in my previous video on how to train your biceps effectively using science, but the results may be different for triceps, so let's have a look into that. So I can't believe I've actually just stumbled across this study, because if you're watching this video the day it comes out, this study came out a week ago. Whilst I'm filming this video, it came out 4 days ago. So this is some very, very recent research. There's actually a series of meta-regressions. So the whole title is Exploring the Dose-Response Relationship between Estimated Resistance Training Proximity to Failure, Strength Gain, and Muscle Hypertrophy. So in basic terms, that is basically saying, what is the relationship between how close you train to muscular failure and the amount of hypertrophy you're going to gain? And if you remember what I said about meta-analyses, this is a meta-regression, which is basically one step on for a meta-analysis, because meta-regressions take into account certain variables by using protocols and calculations that make all of the results relative, so you can actually extract data from it and understand it properly. So that's another reason why this study is really good. So the key point of this study is the fact that dose-response effects of proximity to failure have not been analysed collectively in a continuous manner. So that's why this meta-regression's been done. And then if we scroll down to the results section, it says there's a null point estimate indicating a negligible relationship for strength gains. We're not concerned about strength gains, but it says the marginal slopes for estimated RER were negative and their confidence intervals did not contain a null point estimate, which indicates that changes in muscle size increased as sets were terminated closer to failure. So again, let me simplify that for you. That basically means the closer your sets were terminated to failure, so the closer you got to failure before you stopped your set, the more muscle size you will have gained from that set. That's literally as simple as it is. And again, it says the latter being meaningfully influenced by RAR, and by the latter they mean muscle hypertrophy. So that means the less RAR you have, or reps in reserve, during your set, the more hypertrophy you'll experience because of that set. Right, so let's round off what we've actually learned in this video and how we can actually apply it to our workouts. So we've learned that the best exercises for your triceps are the ones that are done overhead. You should be doing a full range of motion. you should be using a variance of exercises, but you should be focusing on exercises that encourage higher levels of shoulder extension, i.e. 180 degrees of shoulder extension. So this can be things like skull crushers and overhead cable extensions. And you should be training as close proximity as you can to muscular failure. So meaning you cannot push the weight any more than you are. Right, so we've looked at the science of training your triceps effectively, but all that science means absolutely all if it doesn't work in practice, because as I always say, the best workout is one you'll actually stick to. So we're going to apply everything we've just learnt in this video to an actual workout and see if it actually works. And I'll see if it's actually a workout I would stick to. Now this workout will be very similar to my normal workouts because my normal workouts are backed by science, but this would be a good example of a science-backed workout for your triceps if you aren't usually sure how to train your triceps. So let's get to it. Right, I've got to say, the end feeling and end result of that workout pretty much felt exactly how my normal tricep exercises and workouts do. But maybe that's just a nod in my direction saying that I am training correctly and in a way that's backed by science. So if you are stuck with how to structure a science-based tricep workout, copy that one. Do the sets and reps that you want. I'd recommend 2 sets between 8 and 12 reps, reaching failure within that rep range. Implement progressive overload and other things like that as you normally would. But overall, applying all the scientific principles we learned in this video to a workout feels really good. And I think the fact that it's scientifically backed and it feels good means there's not really any reason why you shouldn't stick to that workout. Anyway, that's this video done. I hope you guys have learned a lot. If you like this video, click the card at the top right corner of the screen. It takes you to another video that is very similar to this one where I work through 5 scientific studies, but how to scientifically train your biceps instead. So we've covered both parts of the upper arm now, and we're going to work around the body, do different videos for different muscle groups, and just hopefully eventually teach all of you lot how to scientifically train every muscle group of your body while still enjoying the workout. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. I post every Saturday at 5 PM, so you don't want to miss it. And make sure you hit the thumbs up to let me know you enjoy the video. Also, if you have any ideas or suggestions, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you lot. Anyway, that's all from me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.